Happy birthday to the Chromosome 18 Registry and Research Society. Today we are officially 30 years old, and so I assure you I'm not going to sing happy birthday. That would make everybody turn off their video right away. But I did want to go through just a couple of highlights of the last 30 years that you may not know about, and give a shout out to some of the people who've made it happen, because I'm just the person who talks about it. There's a whole lot of people who've made all this happen for many years, and I want to acknowledge just a few of them. So I'm going to do a short sort of retrospective, talk about the past, but then we're going to talk about the future as well. So I have a bit of a timeline here that I'm going to go through. And of course, 1990 was the year we became official. And here's our letter from the IRS saying we are a tax-exempt 501c3 organization. And this really was the culmination of many months of work and filling out paperwork and doing bylaws and getting a certificate of incorporation, etc., by myself and Dr. Atkinson, who was Liz's neurologist at the time. And I apologize ahead of time for the pictures. I went through all the old pictures, 30 years worth of pictures, to try to find pictures of various people, pictures that were contemporary to whatever I'm talking about. So this was the only picture I had of Dr. Atkinson and myself. Some of the others of you, be prepared. More pictures are coming. So that's when we sort of were official and got started. And a year later, we actually had sufficient numbers. We had 34 members, I think it was, something like that, to propose a project. And this organization really started with a couple of ideas. One was that we could learn from each other. We could do surveys, and we could collect information, get it back out to everybody, and we could all learn what each of us has learned. And one of the things I had observed was that when Elizabeth started on growth hormone, in the next 6 months or so, or year, she grew like crazy, but her muscle tone improved. She just seemed more alert, more with it, and her hearing testing dramatically improved. And so the question was, first of all, would growth hormone do this for everyone with 18q-? But really, more importantly, was anyone else growth hormone deficient that had 18q-? The literature said, and as our doctor told us, they're all short. So we started with this idea that we would first see, the registry would do some surveys, but we'd also try to find out if other kids were growth hormone deficient. And it became clear very early on that we needed help. We needed medical expertise, and even just to interpret surveys in a way that was going to really provide meaningful information to people. So in 1991, we had 34 members who had kids with 18q-. So I went to talk to Dr. Celia Kay. She's shown here on the right. This was taken 6 years later, actually, when I graduated, but that was in 91 was my first meeting with her. And I explained our organization, what we did, what our goals were, and what our research questions were. And she said, "This sounds like a great project. Let me bring in some other people." One of the people she brought in was Robin Leach, who's the woman on the left, who eventually later that year became my official mentor in graduate school. And that's how the research got started. We were able to get a very small grant from Genentech. I think it was $12,000. And that allowed us to send a letter to all the families asking them to get their child tested for growth hormone deficiency, send us a blood sample and their medical records, and we would find out if, in fact, other people with 18q- were growth hormone deficient. One of the families that participated right away, here I need to move on because that all took a few years to get the money from Genentech, get going, And one of the first families that responded were the McDonalds. At the time, Acacia, who's, I don't know, 5 or 6 here, she was only 12 months old, and they were interested in being involved in the research, and they wanted to help support it. And over the last 30 years, the McDonald family and Microsoft, with matching money from Microsoft, have provided almost $3 million for the research. And I can tell you every single day I think of the McDonald's, and I thank the McDonald's, as you should too, because without them none of this would happen. We would not be where we are. In order to get meaningful research going on a group of conditions that were essentially unstudied, they were described, but they really weren't studied in the way to understand or to treat. And not only were they unstudied, but nobody cared. These were really thought to be impossible conditions and just not anything anybody could ever make much advance on. And so in order to use the normal channels or get money from the normal channels through the National Institutes of Health for such conditions would have been just impossible. And so had it not been for their willingness to make significant personal contributions, we would not exist at all, I am most certain. So anytime you interact with them, every time you interact with them, say thank you. They were instrumental in getting this going. And so we enrolled that was 93, and we enrolled our first families in 93 in the research project at UT Health. But the registry also in 93 had its very first family conference in Schaumburg, Illinois. And it was led by and organized by Yvette Cohen. I didn't have a picture. She's right here in the middle. I couldn't find a picture of her. She actually chaired a second conference and has been involved in a third conference in Chicago. So she's been an active member for a very long time. But there's one person here I really want to point out, because here we go. Here's John McGing. John is the only person, other than myself and my daughter Elizabeth, who've been to every single conference. So here's John at our very first conference. Any of you who know him appreciate that he hasn't changed one bit. So that's 1993. And we had an outing at the Discovery Zone. And so they gave us all little name tags because we were in a group that said Chromosome. That was cute. In 1994, and I'm not going to go through every single year, okay, but the initial years were really important. So in 1994, we had enough money to hire somebody for 6 months, 1/4 time. Not much time, but I needed help. I was in graduate school, so I hired my best friend, who I knew was personable and trustworthy and very much a penny pincher like myself, and so I knew she could help us all out, and that's Gloria Ellwanger, and she worked for the Chromosome 18 registry until 2010. So many of you know her, and many of you keep up with her and are good friends with her, and so she's been an invaluable member of our group for many years. And in fact, by the time the 6 months was over, we had enough money because she was getting things done. She was communicating with families. She was sending out dues notices. We had enough money after 6 months to keep her on. By the end of a year, she was almost full time. And as I said, she stayed on with us for many years. So she was an invaluable asset to our organization to help us be where we are today. Also in 1994, another person appeared on the scene. Dr. Hale was hired by UT Health as a pediatric endocrinologist, and he was introduced to our project by Dr. K, and jumped right in and really moved it to a different level of more comprehensive clinical research. He got us to be a part of the Clinical Research Center for the university, so families could be seen there, and was a great organizer of people, and is still involved. but I had to find some old pictures of him. Here, in the top picture, he's speaking at the first conference after he arrived in San Antonio. In 1998, we testified before Congress, before the House of Representatives Appropriations Committee, their subcommittee for Labor, Health, and Human Services. And we testified in person in 1998 and 2000, and this picture is actually taken in 2000 when we're testifying. But I wanted to point out that even though we gave oral testimony twice, we actually went to Capitol Hill for 15 years, and we got language in the report from Congress, to the budget report from Congress to the NIH to increase funding for chromosome abnormalities, especially chromosome 18. And every year NIH would send back a report with some language that to a politician sounded like they addressed the question, but to us and anyone in medicine or science would realize that they sort of just obfuscated the answer, and it really didn't address the question. And after about 15 years, we got very frustrated and realized that without a lot of consistent, almost daily effort to get all kinds of the congressional offices on board, we really weren't going to make any progress in that way. And so we gave that up. But we did make a lot of friends, start to understand how things worked in Washington. So it was a valuable process in that way. And a lot of families participated in that and going to walking the halls of Congress, meeting with congressmen, mostly congressional aides. And that started in 98. In 1999 was another very important year because we hired our first executive director, Claudia Tra, who was with the organization many, many years. I think everybody knows Claudia because she's at every conference and always a valuable participant in everything we do. And she hit the ground running and right away organized the next year in 2000 our first golf tournament, first of many, many golf tournaments, and we have one coming up, and I'll talk about that later. And those were really invaluable for raising community awareness and raising lots of funds to help the services of the Chromosome 18 registry, as well as helping provide research funding for the registry. Also in 2000, the Botello family in Cape Cod, really Botello Lumber, started doing an annual charity golf tournament. And over the years, they have raised, I think, about $400,000 for the Chromosome 18 registry. And they, again, have a golf tournament coming up in August, I hope. And we'll see what the current situation does to that, but I think they should be able to hold it in August. And so the gentleman on the right is Steve Botello, and he has twin sons with 18q-. So they've been very dedicated to the organization, and we thank them all the time for all the work that they do consistently year after year. Also in 2000, at the conference in 2000, was the first conference that Rick Guardati attended. It was hard to find a picture of Rick. We have thousands of pictures taken by Rick, but not so many pictures of Rick at that time. And so here was one picture, probably not his favorite. I did find a couple others, but they were worse. So he has been an invaluable part of our Chromosome 18 family for many years, and I know everyone knows and loves Rick. In 2001, the Australians had their first conference. And you can see it's quite a group of people. It was a great time, and that was their first conference. They have one every 4 years, and that organization was led by Marlene Brightwell, the woman in the picture with her husband Scott and daughter Erin. And she's led that organization for many years, only recently retired. But I wanted to give a shout out to Marlene. And Marlene actually attended the first Chromosome 18 conference in Chicago. So, so she's been an active and great supporter for many years. In 2004, we realized that, here we are trying to work on these unappreciated, unstudied conditions and ultra-rare conditions. So what if we work together with other chromosome groups and try to put on a conference together, get some scientific expertise excited about chromosome abnormalities in general. Let's build a community. And so what we did was host the World Congress on Chromosome Abnormalities, held here in San Antonio at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center. Our logo is here on the upper left, and the other host organizations are shown here. It was a very successful conference. We had about 500 people in attendance, about half families, half scientists. The scientists were all excited about meeting the families. The families were excited about meeting the scientists. It was actually a great experience. Unfortunately, we, with that group of scientists, wrote at least 7 grants to the National Institutes of Health and could never get any of the research funded as a consortium. Even though this was a time when the NIH was trying to fund consortia. But again, these are unstudied, unappreciated, thought to be impossible to understand conditions. So that was our uphill battle. But one of the things that happened at the World Congress on Chromosome Abnormalities was we had an adult panel. Our self-advocates for the first time had a panel, and they're shown here, and they were led by or moderated by Dr. John Carey, our good friend for many, many years. And they're shown here, and that's become a consistent part of and a highlight of our annual conference. In 2009, the Europeans had their first conference in Glasgow, Scotland, and while I had many pictures of Scotland, I didn't have a single picture I could find of the conference. I know they're out there, and maybe somebody can post them on Facebook or someplace, but here's a pretty picture of the Highlands. This is the view where the view of the lochs look a lot like the shape of the map of Scotland. So, and it was a pretty picture. And a beautiful country. We love Scotland. And it was a great conference, by the way. And they have a conference every other year, except that this year it was postponed to 2021. So it's going to change the schedule a little, but that's a thriving organization, sister organization as well. Jumping ahead to 2016, we hired our first full-time professional executive director, Neil Parker, who has been an absolute blessing and a joy to work with, and is really moving this organization to the next level of professionalism, of increased member involvement and member services, increased funding, and we appreciate everything he does. Please, his 4th anniversary is coming up in another couple of days, his 4th anniversary with the organization. So please reach out to Neil and say thank you. We really appreciate all that you do, and our organization is better because of you. So that was 2016 when he started. And not to be forgotten, of course, in 2017, Neil hired, in his wisdom, Amy Behan, who is our Director of Operations, and she is the most organized person I have ever met. So don't tell Bridget Swallow I said that, because she wants to be the world's most organized person, but Amy is amazing. And she has her finger in everything that goes on and makes it more efficient and keeps track of all these work study students that we have in the office, and she's just been amazing. And so we thank her every day. So that brings us up to today. And I need to point out through all of this that if there's one thing that defines us, is we are resilient. And in these most trying times, we're reminded that, the people who can cope are us. We've been there, done that. We're always working on Plan B because something always happens with Plan A. And so our Plan B for this year is changed a little bit. As I think you all know, we had to postpone the conference for a year. And so our revised schedule for 2020, just so you know, you'll hear more about all these things later. But I wanted to tell you that we're going to, in May, roll out the Power of 18. Our Starfish Dash that should have been at the end of April had to be postponed. This creates a cash flow issue. We can bring in about $40,000 from the Starfish Dash, which we won't have going into the summer. And so we have a new virtual fundraiser called the Power of 18, which is an effort to get as many people as possible to donate just $18, to get teams of 18 in every state who will then try to get 18 people in turn to donate $18, and hopefully their friends will then donate $18. It's not a large amount, but if we can get enough people involved, then we can make up for that difference and be able to pay the bills in the upcoming months. In July, because we're not having our usual conference in person in San Antonio, we're going to have an unconference. And because this is our anniversary year, our birthday year, every day we will post on Facebook a collection of pictures from 1 year's conference, starting with 1993 at our first conference. So our challenge to you all is find pictures and think of memories from your first conference. And on the day that we're highlighting that conference, please post those on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, I think once a week we'll send out sort of a collection of the week's worth of pictures from past conferences, so you can be reminded of all these amazing self-advocates and what they were like as children, and I think it'll be a fun retrospective. Also, we'll do a virtual merchandise sale. We've sort of done this in past years, but we will have a merchandise sale again. So we'll have golf shirts, t-shirts, sweatshirts, etc. We'll also do a virtual silent auction. So those of you who were thinking of or collecting and finding things for a silent auction for the conference, you don't need to save those for next year. We'll do it again this year. We just need people to be thinking of more things that are good silent auction items, and take a good picture, write a good description, and be willing to mail it to whoever buys that auction item. So that's a little extra commitment this year, is being willing to mail it. But many people mailed their auction items to the Chromosome 18 office for us to take to the conference. So it's just going to be mailing them to the recipient. And also, I have gotten most of our, in fact, all of our medical team speakers to agree to do a video of their presentation. And we'll be sending those out a couple a week during the entire month of July. So we'll have some of the same information to share. Of course, I'll do the usual research update and the individual syndrome updates like I usually do. And so we'll have lots of YouTube videos for you to watch in July. So we'll have lots of information, just won't be able to be together, which is really the best part of the conference. But it's more important that we all stay healthy. And so it's worth it for this year. Some things that will remain the same are the golf tournament. We still expect to have our golf tournament in San Antonio and on September 25th. It's a Friday afternoon, so please join us if you can. Also, the Starfish Dash, as I said, is moved to November. The Starfish Dash is a 5K walk run on the UT Health campus, and it's part of Fiesta. And all of San Antonio's Fiesta has been moved from April to November, the 5th to the 14th. and we're traditionally the second Saturday of Fiesta, so we're keeping that position, which is November 14th. So you might consider coming and joining us then, or have a virtual team, Spirit Runners, to help us raise support for the activities of the registry. And then, as always, we'll have Phantom Tea in December. First Sunday in December is our official Phantom Tea Day, where we hope all our friends and families have a cup of tea or a glass of wine and remember our families and make their year-end donation to Chromosome 18. So the year coming up still has many things going on, keeping us all very busy, and I hope you enjoy all these things, even though it's at a distance, often just virtually. And thank you so much for all that you do for our families to keep us a vibrant, exciting organization moving forward. Keep coming up with ideas for how we can do things better, how we can help more families, extend our services in more ways, and increase the research so that families can help make sure that people with chromosome 18 abnormalities are able to overcome the obstacles they face. Our goal is to help them eventually have independent lives, which is a big goal. But, you know, if you don't have a big goal, you'll never get there. So, happy birthday to the registry. Thank you all for being a part of this amazing organization. I love you all, and please stay well. Thank you.